Today we have The Chemical Brothers. It's The Chemical Brothers, not just Chemical Brothers. We Are the Night, which is an album that was recommended to me, and I was very impressed with it. And I'm gonna sort of go through the album. I find it really interesting. Some albums I just have like general things to say about them. Others I kind of tend to go song by song because I have a lot to write about them. This is one where I'm gonna try and go mostly song by song, at least at the beginning, because the intro starts very ominous, right? It's a very, I guess, distorted sound, singers slowly like fading in with a rising There's No Path to Follow or something along those lines, which is, the title track, No Path to Follow. And overall, I've realized that, from the beginning I was like, oh, okay, so this is going to be like a very ominous thing, whatever. I wasn't truly sure what was going to happen. And then the title track, which opens with very weird sounds, and I was like, oh, okay, so this is going to be one of those albums. And yeah, honestly, the fucking title track just opens with this, like, sort of what I can only describe as robots dying, because that's what it sounds like. Overall, it's like very interesting sounds, and then they sort of transform into these, I guess, bell sounds, if I had to describe it. I still kind of like can't figure out what this album is about, sort of thing, but it does sound like it's sort of these, if I had to put it, I would say like Eastern European electronic music vibes type thing. You have usually lyrics repeated over and over, you have a lot of like weird electronic sounds, and then you just have these very like a groovy bass and whatnot. So yeah, I guess in a way the intro song did actually do a very good job at introducing the album, which is a thing that not a lot of intro songs when it comes to albums tend to actually do. So yeah, I would say the sounds aren't exactly like the most friendly to hear, but they are super interesting to me. And again, just to reiterate, the bass goes super fucking hard. Like, it gives such a groovy vibe to the entire song. I think that the bass is kind of like the glue of the album, especially in this song. You notice that a lot. The bass just sort of makes every element, even all of the hostile elements, sort of come together and glue together. It does a really, really good job. In a way, it like reminds me of those 80s songs, I guess, except like, there's way more quality and whatnot. Like, in a way, it reminds me sort of the patchy mode. I don't know why, like, this song reminded me sort of at least the chorus of the song reminded me a lot of like the patchy mode. So that's sort of what I would place the sound type of the album. And yeah, the part of the, I guess, vibe when it comes to especially the second song, I've noticed that a lot as well. A lot of the parts, especially the more, I guess, quote-unquote hostile sounds remind me a lot of early 2000s video game soundtracks, especially Ratchet and Clank. You have sort of these mechanical sounds mixed with sort of these alien type sounds, and then you just have an absolute killer bass line making the entire groove come together. And this song, and even the third song in the album, sounded really like that. So honestly, so far I'm really impressed. I find it super interesting, and I never really heard like this type of thing before. I mean, I have, but it's been very, not as much as this, like not in your face, especially when it comes to how harsh a lot of the sounds are. And we're on the second title of the track, or the second track of the album rather. And then, moving on to the third track, it does have more lyrics than just, a phrase repeated over and over, but you still have plenty of that, phrase repeating, I guess, so no worries there. And the background singing actually contributes a lot to the atmosphere, because there's sort of these background harmonies going on, and that also contributes a lot to this cacophony of, sounds where some of them are super harsh, some of them are super approachable, and all of that just creates a sort of atmosphere where everything comes together. So, 3 songs in, and I'm pretty enjoying this. Fourth song of the album, Saturate, it definitely sounds a lot like 2000s EDM, if I had to like place it. It's the type of thing that you hear, like especially on the internet, YouTube videos type thing, that era of EDM, especially when it comes to the mainstream EDM, because obviously, there's a lot of underground stuff being done back then. But yeah, it reminded me a lot of bands like Pendulum, for example, and even like, you know, the meme song 009 Dreamscape, or yeah, I think Dreamscape Sound System is what's called. It's more on that regard, so in a way it does sound a bit more vanilla, and honestly all of that got me wondering when this album was released, because over the first few tracks, especially the second and the third track, I was under the impression that the album was released like fairly recently, because when I looked at it and when it sounded old, sure, but it sounded the type of old of newer bands trying to emulate an older sound to try and sound harsher. But no, the album was actually released in 2007, and honestly, this song kind of gave it away for me. Because, again, like, first three tracks, completely fine. This song, I was like, yeah, nah, 2000s EDM for sure. And honestly, that is super surprising, you know? Because, again, the first three tracks sound very fresh, sound very contemporary, very modern, even though, you know, like, it's like, because there's a lot of bands nowadays that try to sound kind of old with modern, like, compositions and stuff like that, and it creates super interesting sound, right? But honestly, no, this one is just like really old, 2007, so honestly, if anything, it makes it even more impressive when it comes to me hearing this album. So yeah, this is obviously a track goes, it's more vanilla, and I would say it's kind of less interesting than what the album opened with, but it's still very good, and it's still very good to vibe with. From this point onwards, you can really feel that well, yeah, it's 2000s EDM style type thing. Not to say that it's not fun or anything like that. It is very fun. I'm not taking away from that, but definitely, it's not as impressed as the album openers. Again, the album openers got me really like wondering what the hell is even going on. Got me super engaged, which is good, because I think that as far as album openers go, and as far as, you know, beginning of albums, I think you really need to put the most interesting songs there, because you really need to grab the listener right away, right? So I think the album in that regard did a very good job. But yeah, obviously, as far as the album went post that, it had a lot more vanilla songs and a lot, I guess, less interesting to me, but still really good songs. Then we have Das Spiegel, which sort of goes back a little bit. It doesn't go back fully, but it does go back to that style of second, third track. I would say that a lot of this track actually reminded me of certain Kraftwerk songs, you know, like playing with a lot of different sounds and this sort of, I would say, dreamy, robotic type of sound style. So that's what I would sort of peg that. And then we have the Salmon Dance. And look, I had absolutely no idea that this song even was like part of this. Like, I had heard the song before, it's kind of a famous meme, but I never really knew where it came from or anything like that, nor have I had ever heard this song fully before, so I guess I know now. Honestly, like, I understand why it became famous. It's catchy, but it's also memeable. It's just like out of the box enough to stand out, but not too much that it's too much out there. Personally, I actually find it the weirdest song of the album, ironically enough. It's still within the, you know, expected sounds, and it's weird enough that it's kind of like surprising, especially the robotic voice explaining things. I feel that will become actually a trend in the upcoming years. But yeah, it actually in a way reminded me of Gorillaz. It's that sort of weird but still catchy type sound. Now, and again, that's the thing that I find very interesting. Because this song became super popular, I think that a lot of people had the impression that this is what the band was. But I think that if you go into this album and you've heard that song, I think the rest of the album, like, it's still super interesting. I think you might like it, but I think you're gonna be surprised that most songs are not like that whatsoever. And I think it's good, because I think that bands that lean too much into the meme aspect end up losing a lot of the, I guess, musicianship, because they try more to be, you know, memes and try to be funny rather than just trying to make good music. So yeah, I guess now I know where the fucking meme comes from. Other than that, the next two songs actually do sound for more like Eastern European, sort of upbeat EDM again. Not as much as like the interesting sounds as the beginning tracks, more so just more, I guess, vanilla on that regard. I mean, in the 2000s, this type of EDM did become very popular in like the Eastern European side of things, especially with like the Ozone and stuff like that. So, I'm not complaining because they're usually super groovy and super catchy, but it's actually interesting to just see the album morph and then morph again and then morph again, while still maintaining a really good consistency in the terms of like the style and the interesting sounds and everything, because I never really got a moment in this album where I was like, oh, okay, I already know what's gonna happen, I already know what sounds they're gonna throw at me. Never a dull moment with this album when it came to me. Post that, we had The Pills Won't Help You Sleep, which is a very chill track. I quite enjoyed it, and this one actually gave me Owl City vibes. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm correct in saying that, but there's definitely a lot of influences that tend to overlap a lot in this album when it comes to the I guess, quote-unquote, EDM sources and the influences that the album seemed to have. And then we have the Seal, just called Seal, I guess, which sounds very high on like the vibes. It's also very robotic, and that song is the same as No Need, which is the last track of the album. These last two songs are far more like toned down in the weirdest sounds and stuff like that. They're definitely far more approachable. That's something that I found interesting about the album as well. As the album went on, it seems that the songs got way more polished in terms of the sounds and everything. To me, I understand, like, that's good from the perspective of them being a song that is catchy, but it's bad from a perspective of it being interesting or engaging. I got way more engaged with the first few songs than I got with the rest of the album. With that being said, obviously the entire album was really fucking good, and I really enjoyed it. Which, my favorite song probably has to go to like We Are the Night. I think the vibes are there, the groove is there, the interesting sounds are there. It's very rough around the edges, but it's also very groovy, it's very catchy. It almost feels like there's a certain like story being told through sounds alone. It's very interesting, it's a very cool song, and it's probably the one I've been replaying the most. That one and the third song of the album as well. Those two have been by far the ones that I've been re-listening to the most. So yeah, overall I quite enjoy this album. Some songs are more, I guess, vanilla, but a lot of it just sounds very interesting nonetheless. It's very inspired by older stuff, I realize. Like I've touched already on Kraftwerk, but also a bit more recent stuff like Depeche Mode, Owl City, and all of that, especially 2000s. I feel a lot of EDM, Eastern European EDM especially. Yeah, even though I haven't mentioned a lot of them now, I feel that those are like the biggest inspirations, seems to me. Which, when it comes to 2000, I guess, EDM culture, and one of the things that I've realized in some songs, and especially the meme song, is that some of it is definitely inspired by like the 2000s internet influence, like specifically the internet, YouTube, sort of silly meme thing, nonsense type deal, type culture. Some songs are definitely inspired by that. So yeah, I'm very pleasantly surprised of this album. It has a lot of interesting sounds, it's groovy, it's catchy, and above everything, it draws from so many influences. So, like, it feels that every song has a new influence, or that every song has something new to throw at you. So yeah, honestly, I've enjoyed it quite a lot. It's also a very cool album cover. We cannot forget about that. Sometimes I forget to talk about that, but album covers are fucking killers. And this one does a pretty good job at setting the mood and everything. I actually really fucking love this one. But yeah, overall, I'll probably give it a, 9 out of 10. I think 9 out of 10 is fair. Yeah, I think 9 out of 10 for this album and how much it surprised me. I think that's fair.